So, Farron, should we talk about like some of those topics that were discussed in the forum post about the role play?
Yes, we should talk about them. I mean, now that we've actually gotten close to Sonata, I mean, we're almost there, and all these players around finally, uh, and we've done some of the role playing out there, and we've seen how sort of it works. I mean, we've answered some of the questions. Does it exist in Wurm? Yes, I
It
mean it
does.
does, right?
Mm-hmm.
It exists into as much as you want it to exist. You can potentially create a role playing area or role play yourself.
Yep, for
Uh,
sure.
let's get, because there's a lot of questions here, and I know there's one that I really want to get to. As I'm reading them, sorry, I'm a little silent, but okay, here's sort of what I'm wanting to get to. So let's say we've established that role playing is possible in Worm. Uh, why do we feel that it hasn't been popular?
Mm.
Is there something in Worm itself that's stopping it from flourishing? Is there something in Worm, or is it just us? Is it just like the community? Uh, I don't know. What do you think?
I think one problem has possibly been just the proximity of players. Like in other MMOs, players are going to be much closer to one another. If I like, there was a lot of role playing going on actually in Ultima Online. That's where I first role played in an MMO myself, and
Mm-hmm.
that would have been in 1999. And I went back. I went into Ultima Online not even being a role player at all, like on any level whatsoever. And it was only because of Ultima Online that I found the whole role playing experience. And there was a lot of it going on over there, but the way it's set up is that people's houses are pretty much packed next to one another. There's neighborhoods where you can see your neighbor's house basically in the same screen most of the time. You can see whether they're home at home or not. You can go over and, knock on their door and interact with them immediately. Whereas in Worm, we are all so far apart. There are, of course, these village areas where there's a lot of deeds close to one another, but a lot of times we have a lot of space between us. Now, one good thing is that we do hear these distant noises of somebody sawing, a log or mining or something like that. So that's a really cool, um, audio experience that, hey, there's somebody in the vicinity. There's somebody up to something over there. Maybe I'll go over and see what they're doing. But it's not so. I don't know. Do people pay visits to each other? I mean, now in our alliance, of course, we do. We pay visits to each other a lot. But I don't know about. I mean, I've been living the hermit life all these years. You're much
Mm-hmm.
more experienced with that, Farron. You guys have been living in communities for the most part, right? Or have you ever lived secluded? Has it ever been just you and Adam with no one else in the area?
I mean, let me think about that. There was a time we lived on the first deed on Xanadu where there wasn't really many people in the area for a short period of time. We did have a friend that came over, and then eventually there was people that were there, but there was a time when there was nobody. But overall, like all the times in Deliverance, there were people, there were other people in the area to talk to. All the times in Xanadu. I mean, one time that we were sort of alone for a while, and this is kind of funny. And thinking about this was when we were designing Linton. there wasn't really that many players that came to Linton.
Hmm.
But we had a goal of completing that town, and that's what we did. So there was a little while, but a lot of times we were always around players. Arcake is saying, so far you seem to have met all that you've met today is role players on Cadence, and that's sort of true, other than the one guy that didn't want to play along. But uh, I think all it really takes is somebody to start off that engagement,
Mm-hmm.
and then you find that most players want to play along because
Mm-hmm.
we're in a game world. We're all here to try to escape reality and maybe turn into a dwarf on a stream every now and then. Thank you, Dutchman. But we we tend to, like, if somebody's going to engage you in that sort of fantasy, the first instinct is that you want to play along, you want to help out, you want to be part of it. And that's what I think we saw so
Mm-hmm.
far in this game. And so then the real question is, okay, well, the community itself can do roleplay. Nothing's stopping us from doing roleplay. The game might not give us everything that we need to do roleplay. So how could we foster? Is there anything that the game could do or the devs could do that could help foster this kind of gameplay, this type of role playing that it's
Mm-hmm.
not currently doing? And what are those things? I mean, it might be a variety of things or a lot of things. What do you guys think in the chat? What are those things that you would want to see that could help in fostering role playing, knowing that the things that we want to see as a role player would be immersion, would want to be atmosphere, would want to be anything that could help us get into the role more. So, and
And while we're,
as people are saying that, what do you think, Katz?
I'm
What
still
would
sort of
your
stuck
number one thing be?
on, oh man, I'm still sort of stuck on thinking kind of the opposite, like what is actually stopping that previous question of yours? And I'm just thinking to myself that
Mm-hmm.
could it be that since when you live in a neighborhood, everyone is in the local chat, you have no reason to run over to your neighbors because you can just ask them in the local, right? Now, of course, in other MMOs, you're going to have the say, but I think the proximity of talking to somebody is much smaller than our what was it,
That's
50 tiles
interesting.
or so forth. I mean, just think about, for instance, our alliance. Well, of course, our alliance, we're talking alliance chat mostly, but if we were to just imagine that to be local, it would be enough for us to just talk there. We wouldn't have the reason to actually go and visit. Whereas in Ultima Online, for instance, you did actually have to walk towards somebody to talk to them. And also their system of being able to see the chat like in a list format. So the primary way you saw people talking was through the text being above their heads. There was something like a little chat window, but it was really, really badly done. So I think people depended on actually seeing those phrases above the heads much more. And I'm not saying at all that we should remove local. Absolutely not saying that. I am just trying to still think about why we don't see more of that kind of interaction happening. And do you think it could be that the local chat is contributing to that a bit?
That's a possibility. I like that. I don't think I've ever heard of that idea of reducing the local range or reducing the range at which you can, or let's say this, to separate the chatter from the local range. So you still have the local range. Let's say for people that don't want that to reduce, you can still see people within 80 tiles, but maybe you can't hear them until
Hmm.
you get closer to them. But you could still, like, hear them chop tree, and you can hear them chop or mine or something like that, because or saw something, because those sounds travel further than, let's say,
Mm.
somebody just talking. And so they could do that. They could reduce just the chatter, or maybe you're just hearing pieces of it until you get closer to them. Maybe you're just hearing like a distant echo. So like if you're too far, maybe the game will say you hear, a distant voice that's you
Mm.
can't understand or something until you get closer to them. Uh, Never heard of that
Yeah,
being
again
said though.
though,
So that's
just
pretty
to be
cool.
no, just to be clear here, I'm not suggesting we should have that. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
still wondering whether that's the
If that
reason,
is a
yeah,
reason,
that we're
oh
not
yeah.
having people interact that way. Because if I think about it, like if they were like, just let's just imagine for a moment that they were to implement something that just for the role players, I don't honestly think I would use that because I'm too used to just using the local. Yeah, so I was totally just like fixated on why is it that we don't see more role playing, and could local
Hello,
chat be
how are
one of
you?
those reasons? So what do you think?
Some
So I
guys
talked
come in.
Hello, how are you?
so I talked about the Ricky Tiki
The
Talk.
reasons, yeah, the reasons why
Yeah, don't
it
have.
doesn't
Yeah.
foster role playing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hello, how
I
are you?
think it has complete. So I think that there's a lot to do with the way that the game is built on uh, being able to be sort of independent amongst yourself. That there's not the game, even though you can join an alliance, you can join a village, and you can join people. You don't have to, and which is fine. Like you shouldn't have to, but because what I mean would be being able to have some sort of game mechanics, like let's say bridges that require more than one person to do stuff, or having game mechanics that give you some sort of benefit to go to other people's villages, or a game mechanic that would make you need to interact with a new player if you were a veteran, that you get some sort of benefit from it if you did that. And these are like small, let's say, developer things that they could do that fosters that sort of relationship between players. And then all of a sudden, players aren't trying to shy away, like the game mechanics aren't trying to shy away you away from other players. Like Adam is like the biggest thing for this, because he essentially created a deed specifically to have nobody else in it. Not because he wants to, but because that's how the game mechanic works. The game mechanic he's figured out works. If I need to start a deed and have a priest, I need to have nobody else in that deed for me to get the most benefit out of it. And that's like the opposite of what
Mm.
we want, right? The developers
Mm.
can create systems and game mechanics and stuff that fosters the interaction instead of trying to pull people away.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that was a big problem with World of Warcraft for me and other games like that, where the game mechanic actually went against playing with others all the way almost to like the very end, because you had to be in the exact same quest all the time with the other
Mm.
person to
Mhm.
to allow you to even play with them or not. And and that's what I think uh, is the problem right now, or one of the reasons in Wurm why a lot of players tend to shy away from that, because yes, you can do role play in this game, but it's almost like now I have to stop playing the game in
Mm.
order to do role play because of the game
Mhm.
mechanics and the way that it works. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
the developers could potentially make some bunch of tweaks that would allow the opposite to happen. So now, instead of making it better to not play with people, make it better to play with people. And now they've done their part in getting people to be together and then the players have the best chance of succeeding in something like role playing, because now the players are together and we're playing the game together and benefiting from that. And all of a sudden, role play is now a much easier option to do.
We
That's
have to
sort of
be
where
careful, though. We have to be careful about
it's a
people who
balancing act.
not forcing people, like not making the game mechanics so that you're getting like a huge benefit from doing, like a technical gameplay advantage from
Right.
playing together, because then you're going to start to get to what a lot of MMOs do, which literally force you to play with other players to actually get like cool stuff done. And I think that's fine to some extent, but I, as you know, am very much like a sort of lone wolf kind of player. And I've heard this from many other lone wolves out there who absolutely love Wurm because it doesn't force you to. I mean, of course, there's things like making a bridge, but then at least you could set it up with an alt, for instance. There
Mm-hmm.
are a few little things in the game that you kind of coax you to play with other players, but I would never want to lose that aspect from Wurm, where we're able to also play the solo life if we choose to.
And that's the balancing act that they would have to. I don't. They would have to just lay out and plan accordingly, because nobody wants to take. And I've heard it just like you have. I've heard it so much, like somebody saying, "Oh, let's make it so." It requires a group or something, and then all of the people that like to play alone comes out and they don't like that at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's true. But what I think I'm saying, and it's like completely at this point, I don't know what I'm saying, but I think what I'm saying is not that take away things from players that want to play alone. Let these players play the hermit life and by themselves and all that stuff. Great. But why would that stop them from being able to incorporate mechanics that allow people to play together? Like, it shouldn't be exclusive, or it shouldn't be like one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't both exist? And if their comment is at this point, well, I play alone or we play alone, and therefore we cannot have any mechanics in the game that promote people playing together.
It's more like we should feel included in any game mechanics and not forgotten.
And like you said,
Not so much stopping, them. It has to,
right,
like you say, it has to be designed in a way. I mean, a lot of MMOs have these kind of scaling systems that, for instance, if there's a certain quest or a mob, the more people you have doing the thing, you're able to do it solo, but then the more people you have involved, the greater the rewards are. I think that's a pretty fair system because that allows the solo player to enjoy that quest or that task, and then it also allows a larger group and you get a greater reward from that. That kind of thing I'm still fine with. I don't feel salty if a large group gets better rewards. I just want to feel included, and as long as there's a way for me to do it somehow on my own, I'm happy with
right.
that.
And so there's got to be some sort of line, and that's the line that we need to. No, we don't need to find, but they would need to find. And they've established a little bit of where they feel the line is with what they've released. And just the example that you gave was, okay, bridges. Okay, here you go, like hermits, a system that requires 2 people, and then the reaction to that tells us a little bit about something. And I guess your reaction was, 2 people, I'm still okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I can bring in all, so far so good.
Mm-hmm.
And that line just has to sort of be established. How far can we go? 3 people? And then what about those 3 people would they be doing? And what's sort of the action that they'd be performing, and then what's the reward that they're getting from it, and then so it could be as simple as, okay, it's not something new, but maybe it's something that they could do together that helps or makes things go a bit faster. And we have stuff like that already, like indirectly, like mining.
And you
If you
look
have
at
3
rifts, right?
people, and rifts, which is another thing that takes a while, and then our players in their house being like, oh, I wish I could go to a rift by myself.
Well, what happened on Tuesday?
Yeah, you
Because
were
I have
saying
the
that.
worm roulette on Tuesday, right? And the pointer went to Exodus this time, and I stumbled up on the top of a mountain. I stumbled upon one of those mini rifts, one of these scout camps or whatever they were called, and I was like, so I've never taken part in one of those, and I was asking people excitedly in the chat, like, guys, can I actually do this solo? And everyone was saying, yeah, 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 you can totally do that. I was so delighted that there was these like mini riffs that you could actually solo from start to finish.
Right.
And I was so ecstatic to take some oleander logs with me because I've been wanting oleander for such a long time, but I just didn't want to take part in these huge multi-hour riffs with, tons of people and tons of mobs. So it was very delightful. That's an excellent example of how you could implement that there's a little bit for everyone.
And that's a good example, because I would say, okay, we have the rift system and a player cannot do it. So if you're a hermit and you're like, I love the idea of rifts, I cannot do the rift, I don't know how you would feel about that. The fact that they made it in a way that requires more people to get together and do that. Even like uniques and all that stuff requires lots of players to get together and do that. You can't do it by yourself. And so if you're mad and usually you're thinking black and white here. Well, I can't do it, but I wish the devs could create it so that I could do it by myself. I wish it scaled, and then the devs basically come back and say, we're not going to allow that. Like, it's specifically, this is made for lots of players. So instead, what we're going to do is we'll create something else for you. Something completely different, a tiny little riff sort of experience that you can do. And does that make you happy? And if the answer is like, sure, like, fine, I can't do riffs, but
yeah, absolutely,
that's
absolutely fun. Yeah,
and so
yeah.
that's a great example of how they could balance it. They can create things, let's say in a village, that require a village of, people to do, but then they also give you like a hermit something to also accomplish. So an example here, I always talk about my village update system that I'd love to see in this game. And so making it so there's items that are there in this village update system that you can earn, that a village with more people can earn. And then there's items that a smaller 1 or 2 person village can also earn. So there's like benefits for everybody. And I think that's how they would have to go, right? Like, not everything can be done by one player.
Yeah.
And I'd argue not everything should be able to be done by one
I do
player.
agree there, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
But everybody needs to be included.
Because that's where I have a problem, is where there's an MMO which gradually funnels all of the players together by force, that there's absolutely nothing that you can really do on your own. And I think I felt that sort of like in Dark Age of Camelot, for instance, like you start off doing quests which you can do on your own, but in the end, if you want to enjoy the end game content, you pretty much had to play with other players. And then I felt like it's useless for me to even continue the game at that point. So I stopped playing Dark Age of Camelot because of that very reason. And it could be that I just didn't, there was something that I didn't know about. Some of you in the chat might be saying, but cats, you could have done this or this. I probably didn't know about it, but that's how it felt to me, that now if I want to continue playing, I'm going to have to team up with other players. And I did try to do that, and it just wasn't for me at all. And so I just simply quit the game. And it felt like all those months that I'd put into my character went sort of into nothing. Like it was kind of a waste in a way.
Yeah. So I mean, really, to sum up this whole idea is that you should be able to play in groups. You should be able to play solo. Like there should be content for each. It's the same with like, I mean, it's the same sort of argument as people say, I should be able to craft everything as a low player. Like, why are you creating items that only a 90 crafter can create? And it's like, I look at it and think there should be items that only a master crafter can create. Like there should be these items that are locked behind this skill of 90 crafting. You should be able to see the progression of you being able to craft these small items and then being able to craft these grand items or whatever. I feel also there should be items that you would need multiple people to create. We don't really have that right now. Any item can be created by anybody with enough time, except for bridges. Bridges is the one exception. And it's not saying that you're leaving out players just because you need, let's say, 2 players to work in tandem to, let's say, create something. I just think that that's something that can foster relationships between people. It's something that can foster the ability to have the need for people to communicate with each other, even if it's in a small little respect. Things that we haven't brought up that we already does this is the need for priests. You would call over a priest to help you. The need for like, enchanted grass if you don't have it and that sort of thing. You shouldn't be able to do everything yourself, but you could if you had the need for that. And like I see some people, and I'm so sorry, we're so far behind in the chat.
Yeah, lots of good comments here.
Yeah, if you're wanting to do bridges and stuff, just you would roll an alt and you'd be able to do it. And so I guess the point is, don't not do it just because. Like you shouldn't always be focused on, let's say, the solo player. As I guess I'm looking at the developers here. Don't just focus on the solo players. Figure out some sort of techniques that allow the gathering of players to come together while not excluding the players that want to be hermits and stay alone together. And I don't know if you've been reading the comments, if you're wanting to bring up anything that people are saying.
Well, Raybarg has a good point here. In Wurm, if you need 2 players to craft something, then people would just end up making alt accounts to make them. So how would you get around that? How would you actually encourage like real?
No, that's not really a problem for the devs to solve anyway, right? The devs just need to provide that if players want to do alts. That's fine. But the devs at this point have done their job. Here's a system that can be used to foster players, whether you want to or not. It's up to you, players, but at least they did it. Right? Because the other alternative is like just not doing it.
Reading through what people are saying here.
So, and Kementari, I'm really far behind. I'm finally going to read all of your comments. Would be nice if there was something somewhere that was like an event, weekly, monthly, at a big town, and everyone went there, like a dance, a festival, a market, something that you could get a whole bunch of people for in a smaller area where it would be easier to RP. Yeah, I would love that. And I think that even though a lot of that could be player run, there might be some systems that the devs could create that could help allow that. An example, you just said, like a dance, like a festival. We don't have any systems that allow us to dance. We don't have any systems, I mean, other than the emote that makes us do nothing. We don't have a system to play music. We don't have a system to run a festival other than us using other game mechanics for it, which we've done. Like festivals like the Impalong have lots of cool creative ideas, and we'll be doing in the future some festival like stuff or some event like stuff. And but for sure, if there was like systems that we could utilize to to help with that sort of like gathering, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
We got
man.
Bala.
If we only had like instruments and dance emotes, and there's so
That'd be
many
pretty cool.
roleplay opportunities right there. Yeah.
Project Gorgon has the instruments, and they do it in a
And
pretty cool way. And
Lord of the
Rings
Rings
Online.
Online. Yeah.
Yeah. We actually played Lord of the Rings Online, me and Adam, for a short time.
Hmm.
Yeah. I don't think we
What
ever
did you
talked
think of
about
that?
that. Love the music system. Loved
Yeah. That was pretty much the only thing I enjoyed there, to be honest.
I loved so I was the Hobbit because I like tiny characters. And I thought the Hobbiton area was really well done. It was the story and the stuff was really cool. And then I kind of didn't go very far from there. I mean, it repeated. We went up to pretty high level, if I remember correctly, and then it just sort of kept repeating itself. Adam didn't like the combat as much. It wasn't fluid combat. It took a little while to get used to, which was true. But it was okay.
It's a game that I really, really wanted to get into. I even bought this kind of starter pack that had a horse with it and everything. But I was so bothered by the user interface being kind of mushy and unclear. And also something that kept on slapping me in the face was the monetization system constantly reminding you of what you're, of like what, sorry, you can't do this without, paying. And I just think that, for instance, a game that wants to monetize, Guild Wars 2 did a really nice job of that. They had all the monetization stuff tucked away into one page, and it wasn't all over the UI and every single pop-up like reminding you that you're playing a lesser version of the game at all.
How are you?
Oh, what is this cool place that you're in? I think I'm just sitting there in the cart.
We're just looking at the Sonata Theater performer. I wish there was a dance emote that actually made you dance. They could make this guy do a bunch of things. Maybe he could juggle or something.
There's one problem with this. Do you know what Sonata Theater performer. Do you understand what the problem is here?
Well,
what if players wanted to... Well, not that. Not only that, but let's say players would actually want to make use of this theater. Then this guy is standing there in the way. They couldn't. What a waste. This guy should be standing over on the side somewhere.
Yeah, as the bartender, he should be. Let me quickly just scale over and catch up with the chat, guys. So, Validate saying more emotes. Yes, that is true. More emotes of animations, more animations, and overall, just I wish we had a better avatar in general. I wish they would go out and like purchase better character models and that have great bone structures already built in, so that they could buy or get them to create these like whole whack of animations and then be able to apply them into the game and give us a whole bunch of more emotes and better, less stiff models. That would be awesome. And then Validate, you went on to talk about some of the stuff there, like add a timber yell, timber for trees. Anyway, what were you about to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, even something as simple, like, you know what I really miss? Like, for instance, in Guild Wars 2 or else in World of Warcraft, if I was just standing here with my character in front of you, in those games, my character would most likely do a little stretch, twist around a little bit, scratch their head a little bit, check something from their pouch, maybe is peer off into the distance. But now our characters just stand there and do this breathing animation and just stare creepily And Farron can't even look at my character. You can't even bear to look at my character right now.
If I move my head, can you see my movement?
From my computer, I can see you staring off to the left. Yeah, I'm not seeing your head actually move.
Yeah,
Even though
that'd
I
be
have all
nice to see. I guess it's client side only. And so as far as chat channels, and if I'm trying to remember correctly, the first game I ever played, MMO that I ever played, was the Realm Online, and they allowed us to create channels ourselves by giving them numbers. And you would just join a number, and that number, anybody that joined that number, you'd be able to chat. That's sort of how they handled it. EverQuest didn't have chat channels at first. I think they eventually included them and then allowed you to create your own, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong. It's been a long time. But in Wurm, we don't have the ability to create our own channels. Except
the IRC ones, I guess, right?
Yeah, so like it would be cool to like do like a slash channel and then type in like the name for the channel. And then you can have other people join it, that sort of thing. And a way to explain this is, so for a lot of players might know this, but if you're a new player, you might not know this. You can type IRC in here in this Wurm console. And look, it opens up this new area, which you can't see all of. That's really funny that that it's showing like this as like a new area here. And it automatically joins this channel. You basically are joining IRC. And what is the command? Does anybody remember what the IRC command is to join a channel? Is it just /join?
I think it is.
/join, and then I can be like, I don't know, role play FF or for factional fight or something. And then all of a sudden I'm in a channel by myself and I've got like IRC commands that I can do. And anybody else, like I think I can restrict people access to this channel. But if I don't, anybody else can just go into IRC and join the same way this roleplay FF channel. And then all of a sudden we can chat to each other. We actually used to use this back, I can't remember when we were in Discord. We were on Deliverance, maybe Autumn Twilight era. I can't really remember. And you can join. And then if I said hello,
everyone's
you
joining in.
There you go. Hey, everybody. How did we open IRC? Yeah, so you could just type F1, which opens up the Wurm console, and then you just type IRC right here. And it just opens as this like new tab area. And at this point, yeah, I can just pull this out with the new system. And there's my channel that you can have cross servers, cross clusters. This is something that you can use it for anyway, or you can use it for a very specific purpose. The point here that I'm trying to get to really, oh no, I opened it up and then it put this back here. That's interesting. Little buggy, but yeah, all of us here can hear me no matter where you are. Oh no, I closed it.
Yeah, I think
it's a little buggy. That's okay.
With IRC when I first started, because I was chatting on IRC back in the 90s, and
yeah,
for
me
quite
too.
a few years on that, and I kind of forgot about IRC once these messenger type like chats. We had ICQ. Whoa, and then there was like Microsoft, what was it called? Messenger, and then of course Skype came along eventually, and I kind of just sort of stopped using IRC for some reason. But I knew that Wurm had IRC, and It's actually a really good point that now that we have these tabs, that would be a very handy way to make yourself a little private, like chat group.
Yeah, it's not the best. It seems to not work very well. Okay, there we go. I'm back. And then, so you should be able to hear me.
MSN Messenger, that's right, Dutchman. Yeah.
And so I wonder if, like, just Wurm itself without IRC, they could implement something like this, right? Where you can create your own channels if you're wanting to, just within the game itself. You can have it sitting there for whatever purpose that you want. Other games seem to have done this. I'm not sure. I felt like Worm could have used this a long time ago, like many years ago. They could have done something like this, allowing it. I feel like they didn't because they had the IRC ability that's sort of hidden within Worm itself. But yeah, I'm not really sure. But that's how I would look at it. I wonder if that would be useful to be like, oh, I can just create my own channel. Anybody that knows Worm, maybe some channels become popular, maybe some channels don't. Maybe there's a general role-playing channel that becomes
You don't even
popular.
know about it. Yeah. What if there is one?
And we wouldn't know. And it's because it's so not known that you can just join the IRC channel. It's just nobody does. And I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that. And thanks for joining IRC at such short notice. But if you're wanting to use that for your own purposes, that's in the game. You would just have to join it every time you join the game, which is why I think in the end we stopped using it.
That's true, yeah.
No automated way to join it when you open the game. All right, I'm going to close down. Oh, I keep doing that.
When you right-click the tab and close the tab, do you just leave? I think you just leave the IRC channel.
You just leave. Yeah. Oh, there is an automated way to open the IRC. I assume it's not the easiest thing for a new player to set up. Raybark.
Oh, auto run
Ooh.
that text file. Right.
Oh yeah, the auto run text file.
Raybark, are you actively using the IRC system in Wurm? I'm guessing that you just hang out on IRC just regardless, right? Just outside of Wurm? So, since we're on the topic of what UI elements we could have to enhance the role play or to promote role play, now we've talked about this chat channel. We also talked about, hold on, let me look at this list now. We talked about the voice chat system. What about a tag in our names so that when we mouse over somebody and we see their name, would you like to use that? Like, would you personally, if they implemented this feature that you could add this kind of tag, how would I guess it would have to be sort of like, I'm just going to write this into the chat. Something like that after your name. Would you add that option if you could put it from, say, the settings? I know I
feel
would.
like EverQuest had stuff like this. You could tell based on somebody's name what it looked like, the different statuses that person has flagged for themselves or flagged in the game. Like players could potentially choose to be a PvP player in EverQuest, even on the PvE servers.
Yeah,
and then they would just get flagged.
EQ had colors for RP. That would be even better because it'd be much more subtle. It wouldn't have this glaring like RP text. So did Lord of the Rings Online, says Rick. Huh. That'd be perfect, yeah. And Nasi was saying the same as well. So let's say we had a color setting that we could set. Would you use that?
I would use it. And I would hope that it could be, so I guess it's so the type of system that we'd want to see. And why is there the Easter bunny kind of floating around in front of my screen? Oh, it's Pomona.
We're all watching the show and we're waiting for the show to literally begin. But the guy is standing there. He is not putting on a show for us.
Standing there. Is there anybody, Easter Bunny? Do you have the ability to move this guy over there? No, I think the Easter Bunny is just enjoying the show. I think Pomona is just enjoying the show right now.
I guess for Easter bunnies, it's enough to just see somebody scratching their face once in a while.
Yeah. So I wonder if you want a system that allows you to flag things on and off from your character. And let's say RP might be one of them. And somehow, however they end up doing it, you could tell by something on the character that they are flagged different things. Or should it be a system that has some default flags, but then allows you to create your own flags at the same time? Would that be too custom?
How would other people know what those flags meant, though?
That is true.
Yeah. So I guess it would be kind of cool for a guild, though. Like, imagine if our alliance could choose a certain color for our, you know how in some MMOs, guilds could choose a color for their own text. At least in Ultima Online, I think you could do that. But that's, of course, going on a completely different tangent.
That is true.
Has nothing to do with the role playing.
That is true. Yeah, so let's just answer. Yeah, I would use it. I'd want it to be toggleable so that you could turn it on when you need to. You can turn it off when you don't want to. That rabbit sure likes to hop. And you tabbed out. And when did the rabbit get here? I don't know. The rabbit just sort of appeared. The rabbit is our entertainment right now as we watch
a performance. Yes.
Yeah, she's giving us a performance right now. She's a rabbit. Maybe she won't stay a rabbit.
To me, it almost looks like rabbit ballet. These graceful little hops into the air.
But it's a good show. Well, yeah, it's a magic show.
It's better than the other guy.
Gamers. Sure. I know that other guy just stood there and waved every now and then.
Yeah. Now this is what I call a theater. This is something that players could actually use now.
So yes, Rippins, the bartender went on a break.
Hello.
We've got Conjurer here.
This is like the next show.
Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you?
That wascally rabbit. This Caicus.
What would happen if said rabbit turned into something a little more spooky? I don't know. There's not really much that's spooky in this game.
So Caicus is bringing up one of the other things that we had on our list here. And so if people are wondering, first of all, like what list we're talking about, we are talking about this discussion on the forums. And you are actually, Caicus, mentioning this thing that is last in the list that should we have an option panel where we could write our backstories like you have. I'm not sure if that's even part like
Ooh.
by default that they have in World of Warcraft these days, or do you still have to use an add-on for that? I know there are several different role-playing add-ons where you could put this kind of backstory, some physical features, what the character, what kind of because of course we can't make expressions with our characters. So a lot of times people would describe, does the character look sullen or do they look like a cheerful? Do they seem to have a cheerful disposition? Because how are you going to do that with the emotes enough? So what do you guys think about this? Because this would not take away from anyone and it would give an opportunity for role players to just have this additional tool to, and I think even non-role players would get a kick out of putting this kind of little backstory about their characters.
So let's say on the character window, as an example, you could
Mm,
have some sort of trigger that converts this into a place that allows you to type in a bio or something like that.
yeah.
I feel like another
Yeah.
game I played had that.
Oh.
There's even space for that. Like you're just pointing to the upper right corner there, for instance. There could be like a
Yeah,
little book or
something
something, or
there.
scroll, or some kind of icon. So that would be for the user's point of view, how they would access that panel. How would somebody else inspect your backstory? Because that's part of the whole how that like add-on works in World of Warcraft,
Yeah,
for
so
instance. You're able to inspect other people.
you'd want to be able to inspect other people. So you'd have to go up to the player, and there would have to be some way to trigger that uh, in the menu system. Either
I
switching
get
this look to equipment to like a look character, and then just being able to see their character window, like just like we see our character window. So you just see it like this, and then that would also be there, and you would also see all their equipment and stuff.
Why isn't it, by the way? I've always wondered that. Why doesn't it
Yeah.
open an equivalent? It could be a different color or something just to make it very clear that this is not, so you don't get confused with your own character window. But I've always wished for something like that because
You're
trying to
asking
go and
why?
heal somebody, yeah, like when you go to try and heal somebody, it's just annoying that it's this list versus healing them the same way you would your own character, with the little boxes and stuff.
So it's a legacy system. So in the sense that before we never had a character window. So the character window is something that came later. Instead, we had in the inventory, which you can still turn on if you want, the ability to, oh my God, it's a skeleton standing on a chair.
Uh-oh.
I don't know what to say. There doesn't appear to be a way. I'll just disbelief. Yeah, so there's a way to turn on your body inside of your inventory. That's just the way that it was a long time ago. You'd open up your inventory, you would see your body areas, and that would be where all of your, I guess, where you would equip your items, and also where you would see all of your injuries.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
And then at some point they said, okay, let's modernize this a little bit. Let's actually create a character window. And they created a character window and disabled the body, but then they never went back and switched the like window that you would use when you're targeting somebody else, which I kind of wish that they did. I wish that they had like a window like this that for other characters, for other animals, I wish you would open it up and you'd see like the horse, and you would see like the just the few different slots for the horse.
That'd be
You
so
can see
nice.
their injuries. Yeah, that would be really nice. Yeah, and the reason they didn't get rid of the old way is because there's still players in the game that prefer the original system.
Hmm.
Like
Interesting.
Validate, who I'm guessing Validate, you kind of grew up with that system, and that's the system that you like to use, and they
So
that's just
what's
sort
your,
of what they had to do with an old game. Yeah.
just out of curiosity, Validate, what is the, why do you prefer the old way to do it? Like, I mean, one benefit that I can think of, I guess, is that it's easier to see damage to your gear, for instance. Like when you open that character window, you have to look at the coloring of the icons and mouse over stuff to see how much damage it has. But yeah, that's just like one guess. But what are your reasons, Validate, that you do prefer the old way of doing it? So just considering how the game is now, and while we're waiting for Validate to answer that, oh, there we go. So you can see the damage wounds faster, and you can click queue up heals on a stack of wounds. Oh, that's a good point. So are you saying you can basically like you can do it to the whole group and they just have it go? But you can do that to body parts as well, though, right?
You can do that to body parts.
Without having to individually click them, you just right click the body section, right?
It is different, and yeah, you can, for example, in this window, you can just right click any of these body parts, and then it'll heal all the group of wounds in order, as much as your skill allows, essentially, your mind logic.
Well, Perry G, then again, when you're looking at it from the character window, you also see what has been bandaged, what has been treated with a healing cover, with the little dots that symbolize
Yeah, it's a
heal. So it's just a different visual way to represent that. But I guess
both
if you've
ways are valid.
I guess if you've been used to using the old system, you might not even be aware that there are these little dots on the current character window at all, but there is, in fact.
Yeah, both ways are valid. They're just different, and you kind of understand that there are players that were used to the old way, and that's they allowed it to stay around, and that's what's there, which is fine. So I think that they should do the same thing with the other windows too. Give us a unified character sort of look, and then allow the old way to stay around.
So let's just consider that this kind of if we come back to the question of how could I tell that you have a backstory available for me to read. You were talking first about like the right clicking and then opening. It's sort of the discussion went on to the character window from there. But let's assume that you can't open the character window from somebody else, so you can just look at the equipment right now currently. Should it be another option in the context menu when you're right clicking somebody? There's like look equipment and look backstory, or look
like bio or something like that.
Yeah, like an additional thing in the list, basically.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind either way. Having it just look and then have another option there, that could be fine. And then it opens up a window that just is filled out, or it's not filled out, depending on whether the player has filled it out with a biography of some kind or backstory. It's out of the way. It's not needed for players to use if they don't want to. I don't see why it would be a bad thing for them to add that. And it would be something fairly simple for them to do. So, yeah, overall, sure. One thing that somebody did mention, I can see all the wood out there. One thing that somebody mentioned is the animations. And what I'd like to say, because whenever we think animations, we're thinking animations to our character. I mean, if you guys just heard me say animations and you're like, well, that's animations to my character, mining and stuff, that's true. But when I say animations, I mean more about animations to provide an atmosphere so that it fosters immersion in the game. A couple examples that I can give are, let's say someone, I'm not naming names here, but whoa, oh my god. Goblin is on our cart. Just standing there.
Literally surfing on our cart.
The goblin actually has some nice animations.
Yeah, isn't that actually hilarious that a lot of the animals and creatures and monsters have better animations than our own characters do?
Characters. Yeah. So I'm not naming any names, Pyro. Oh, thanks so much for the sub, Starth. A subscription with your Prime. Thanks so much. Whoa, we're going. Oh, Starth, are you an old player, new player to Wurm? Do you play Wurm? Yeah, that's right, Worming. Why do mobs have idle animations and our toons do not? I have a little bit of backstory there. Because I remember when they were trying to input all of the animations they had for the mobs, all the new characters for the monsters, they outsourced it to a company. I think it was like a friend of Rolf or something like that, or like a family member or something. They had outsourced it to one of their companies to create new models and to give us animations. Because before we had these old models that had no animations, and all of the mobs just sort of glided around the world without any animation. I still like the old dog animation. The big black dog that we used to have. And oh, is this the house that we gave them the horse?
Oh, is it the same one?
Yeah. I'll just go this way. So they I don't know. What I don't remember is if they also outsourced the creation of the player model and animations to the same people. That I don't remember. Well, I guess the point of that story was, and again, Pyro, because you put this in my head, but like priests in general don't really have that many animations. And an example would be, let's say when somebody goes in and starts casting like enchants on, I don't know, items, armor, weapons, food, that sort of thing, and accidentally explodes them, it would be really cool to see that explosion.
Yeah.
So it's not sort of a character animation, but like we need animations that immerse ourselves in the roles that we're playing. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I didn't name any names, Pyro. Okay? I'm just saying that if someone were to explode certain things while enchanting on a priest of some kind, that it would be nice to like see it. It would be nice to hear it. It'd be nice to have that sort of immersion in the world. And I think roleplay, if the devs are listening at all, that could do something about this. If you're going to take anything away from this conversation, I think what you really should take away is a role player, at least this one, would love for you to be able to add things into the game that provides atmosphere. Add things into the game that allows us the fuller immersion within that game, like adding the animations, adding in-world sounds and in-world things like the enchant explosion of things, and to give us players the ability to believe that we're in more of the world.
And I'll tell you, like, after that trailer where I was just using completely different other animations to simulate having actual emotes. So for instance, I can't count how many people have asked me, oh, can you actually do like a milking cow animation? And I've had to tell them, no, just for the purpose of the trailer, it was just a foraging animation that I put the NPC to do. Or else if we think about the cooking situation, I think the animation I was using for that one was just a general use animation.
Yeah.
But imagine if she would be actually chopping something up on the table, for instance. Then
Right.
somebody was also commenting about the character in that kitchen situation,
Hello,
sitting
how are you?
on the stool and actually tending to the fire. I've gotten so many comments from people saying that how can I actually do that in the game? I would love to do that. And these are just normal players. These are not role players. These are just normal Wurm players who would love to do those emotes. Which reminds me of, we didn't actually talk about, so we talked about characters, we talked about UI elements that could help. We didn't talk about actual things like buildings or props.
Yeah.
Or items. Are there items that would help with promoting roleplay?
Are you saying items that are within the game already, or items that you would want to see in the game
additional
to promote it?
Or
okay, additional items. Ooh.
Either additional items or expanding the features of existing items.
I see. Yeah. What do you guys think? And I'm so sorry, Worming. Those three sort of emote perks are for subscribers only. I don't know if anybody wants to pop a sad, one of your subscribers, to help out Worming there. But before I fall deathly behind you guys, I'll thank you so much, Michio. Trinity said you are on the new server. Oh, you're here in Cadence, so you think you're on the island south of Sonata, maybe. I've been following this road randomly, just out of random Wurm need to follow roads. And now we're coming up to some small little town. Not even a town, small hut. Croxus.
Nasi was saying dresses for female characters, absolutely. Seren is saying, you think that Wurm has more items to offer than any game that you've role-played in. Yeah, we do have a lot of items.
It's like, imagine where Wurm came from to where we are now, in the sense that we were not able to put items on top of other items in the past. That was a huge thing that we wanted, and now we have it. Sitting on chairs.
Yeah. When I first started, we couldn't sit on the chairs, literally. No. You couldn't have have a theater performance. You couldn't have couldn't have an audience sitting at an auction like you have on Mystic Highlands. You couldn't have a pub where everyone's sitting and drinking mead.
Thank you so much for those follows. Soda Bubbles, Trinity Truth, Trickle in crits. Hopefully I said that right. But are you looking at Serene's comment there? Dresses and skirts would be really nice. I think in general, the ability to have different clothing types. We keep saying armor because that's essentially all we have right now. But different clothing types for different types of purposes would be exactly what I need to bring that immersion out. And an example is not just like, yes, we need some dresses and skirts and that sort of thing, and like garb for guys, like casual clothes. But imagine and we're used to this as Wurm players, but we're used to seeing armored, geared players, blacksmith. We're used to seeing armored, geared players, do farming.
Mm-hmm.
For a role player, that completely has always bugged me.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely always broken my immersion. And I did know some people that would purposely try to take off all of their armor and place like some sort of cloth gear on if they were a farmer, to make themselves try to look like a farmer. But we don't have any farming gear. We don't have any, leatherworking gear and cloth tailoring gear and all this stuff that would actually make sense for us to have a blacksmith actually having an apron and being able to look like an actual blacksmith would be just...
That would be amazing.
Imagine
now you're cooking in a kitchen with your full, armor on.
Yeah. And one thing that I said, every time I bring something like this up, I always hear people say, like, I don't want to need to have all of these different kinds of armor or all these different kinds of clothing. Where am I going to put all this clothing? And which is a true statement. But with that clothing should come some sort of systems that allow you to easily switch between those pieces of gear, allow you to easily store those kinds of gear, and should promote you wanting to use the gear. It should give you some benefit that makes you want to use it. And then that would, like, just those, and like if you get rid of the tedium of needing to use it and then you promote the use of that gear, all of a sudden you'll see players use it. And then in the game itself, it'll just look so much more immersive.
Validate is saying wardrobe. I don't think, I can't remember if I've opened a wardrobe. I mean, it is a container, right? Does it have different shelves like some of the racks do? Because imagine if you could open a wardrobe and it would have different shelves, and you could save a certain like outfit set there, and then you could just right click that shelf and just auto equip the entire set in one go. And of course, you're also talking, Farron, about like actually having some kind of gameplay benefit from wearing, say, a blacksmithy outfit, right? And I think Raybark here was saying in Ultima Online, you could already look like a proper blacksmith. And I could swear, Raybark, that actually, wasn't it so that some of those clothing pieces gave you some kind of bonus in Ultima Online? Or am I confusing that with another MMO? But I could swear there was some benefits from wearing certain types of like clothing in UO for different guilds. Maybe you could just say there. They added, it is silly to be only wearing armor all the time. No, hold on. They added bonuses on stuff later in UO. Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. So that's basically what I know, and I've heard you talk about that many times before, though, Farron. I could swear that I've heard you talk about these outfit pieces, that they should have some kind of bonus, and then you could actually look like that. I'm pretty sure. So there is the dream really implemented in Ultima Online. It would be really cool if we had that here as well.
You know where else it was implemented? Vanguard. Saga of Heroes.
Oh, yeah, I think you mentioned that the other day. Yeah,
they had it in Vanguard, and they had it. They had a great system. They had, let's say, the character window, for example, would have little tabs coming off the side. It would be like your crafting tab, your harvesting tab, and each one has the ability to load armor onto it, and then it automatically switched you depending on what you were doing. So if you started woodcutting, it would switch your armor automatically or your garb into the woodcutting gear. And then you would look like that person. If you started blacksmithing, you would have your little blacksmithing garb on, and you would look like that. Wouldn't 100% transfer to something like Wurm. I wouldn't want it to automatically change, but I'd want a system that allows you to easily switch in and out of different gear, almost like gear profiles or something. So you get rid of the tedium of like individually putting on and taking off gear or trying to find it in your system, kind of like the tool belt, let's say. You can have different tool belts and then save different tool belt profiles, and then be able to easily load in and out of certain garbs. Yeah,
And
so what do you guys say?
Dujas is saying that kind of mechanics are made in Life is Feudal. Special cook clothes give a bonus for meals, blacksmithing, carpenter, etc. So I wonder why they haven't ever done that in Wurm, actually. Is it just because the whole character and outfit system is like so clunky that they didn't want to add more complexity to it, or?
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe they just never thought of doing it, and then no one ever really did it. And I think a lot of the devs, I mean, I'm putting words in their mouths, but they're probably scared to touch any system right now that would change the balance of leveling, because we all know about the what is the system called? The ruins system in this game. I don't think that the new servers have these yet because of no rifts. Sort of in a mountainy area. Right, so there's this. Actually, let me go a bit more south before I go this way. So they added this ruin system into Wurm, and they did it in a way that they weren't. I don't know what they were thinking. I guess they weren't expecting it, or they didn't think it through, do the math. But it's in the game now, and it essentially provides what they, in the end, deemed too powerful. They looked at the ruin system in hindsight and said, we should not have done this. And it was like too late, because they did it, and now they can't get rid of it in the game. And and essentially they're saying that because they're looking at it and they're like, wow, we just made this too powerful. We just made it so, if you had like a 90 mining, you can essentially get enough ruins on your pickaxe to mine out 100 quality ore, just like that. And they didn't make it rare enough, I guess. I don't know exactly, but it was essentially, they didn't like how they implemented that system. They wish they did it differently. And I think devs are a little concerned when they are attempting to add bonuses or change the way that game functionality works towards quality levels and skill levels and that sort of thing. I mean, in saying that, that's what they did for the cooking system. They added the whole buff system, the affinities and that sort of thing.
And that didn't, I mean, does anyone know? Did that have any breaking effect to the game?
I have not heard of it, no. And so I think that just shows that if thought out well and properly, they shouldn't be any concern over that. But it still would take a daring developer to want to tackle that subject.
Tuxi is saying maybe that could be a new deed perk. So basically, I guess Tuxi are referring to being able to have these kinds of different outfits, or what were you referring to there when you said that?
And at the same time, I mean, the deed perks, wasn't that a topic that you had in one of your streams?
I still need to put together all those notes from my stream as well as the stream you guys had shortly after that, and Adam gave me the document for that. I just need to make a proper presentation to the devs about that.
Okay.
I mean, I just think, yeah, well, that's a whole other discussion, of course. But yeah, I think Tuxie was in that, probably in both of our streams, also taking part in those discussions. I remember that. Yeah, the outfit bonus for Tuxie, right?
Yeah. Different village bonuses. Village update system of some kind. That would be pretty awesome. So, Arcaicus, you're saying Final Fantasy XI has items that you may earn from a guild, such as Cooking Guild. So you can see some characters wearing a chef hat or a baker's apron. Yeah, I'd love for it to just be part of the game, but that's cool that Final Fantasy XI has it. The ability to wear armor, and then maybe just by wearing it, the village that you're in can get the perk to give you the outfit bonus. That'd be like the way that I would see a system like that.
And this is probably going to be a controversial topic, but Seren brought up something that was an interesting point. She was saying that she's thankful that the female armor is not looking like fetish underwear, and it's actually normal armor, like proper armor. Like, because of course we all know that in a lot of MMOs, the female armor looks basically like a metal bikini, and she's hoping that it stays that way for the armor in Wurm. And that reminds me actually of the fact that for my own taste, I definitely love the fact that we have proper armor that does protect us. But I find sometimes that the Wurm clothing is a little bit too, what's the word? Prudish? No, what's the word when you're sort of like super kind of covering yourself up completely? Like just the fact that our characters, when they're not wearing anything, even then they're not actually wearing like underwear. And I'm not saying they need to be wearing, modern underwear. And this is like a topic I've brought up several times.
Everybody's saying more too conservative.
That's the word. Yes, it's a bit on the conservative side. Like if we think about, medieval underwear, it was probably, maybe in the form of like shorts or like a short sleeve shirt underneath the armor. But the fact that they're wearing what looks like to me just like an outfit, it doesn't look like underwear what they're wearing, that newbie outfit. And that always bothers me, because if we're going to talk about something like immersion, it breaks immersion for me that if I want to go swimming with my character, she is wearing a full set of clothing basically.
Yeah.
And I also feel like for my personal taste of how I want my character to look, I would not personally want her. I want there to be the option for conservative looking clothing. I want there to be the option for proper armor that covers you up, but I would also love to see something a little bit not I mean, we're not talking about sexy clothing here, just something a little bit more casual, shall we say, a little bit more attractive, because I don't know, I just get this feeling from the clothing in Wurm that the characters, it doesn't exactly make the characters look, they look functional, but so okay, let me just say this. So in a lot of other MMOs, I will put hours and hours and hours of time gathering and doing quests and hunting mobs to get that certain piece of armor, especially in World of Warcraft. I can't even count how many hours, hundreds of hours I've put in looking for certain pieces of armor to get that perfect, beautiful outfit for my character. And then when I finally got it together, I would go strutting my stuff down the hallways of Ironforge or through the city of Stormwind, feeling so proud of this beautiful outfit I put together. And I know I'm not the only one, because if there weren't a lot of players who wanted to do that, there wouldn't be the transmorg whatchamacallit system there, right? They have a whole
Same
system.
thing in EverQuest, I
They have
must
a whole
say.
system around that. So you did that in EverQuest, but do you notice, Farron, that at least for me in Worm, I really don't care at all what she looks like because
Right.
all of the options they're just unattractive to me. All of them.
Yeah. So same thing. You would go out in EverQuest and you spend hours and hours, hundreds of hours doing something, some quest or some dungeon to get some piece of gear that looked amazing, and that was a big allure to the early
Yeah.
days of EverQuest. And so let's apply that logic. Okay, we know what it feels like. We both know what it feels like to want to do that, to want that piece of item, to the need to want to show it off. Let's say because it visually looks pleasing or different. How does that? Because we don't have dungeons and we don't have quests and that sort of thing. How would that translate to Worm so that we get the same feeling once we get that item? Do any thoughts come in mind that you might have?
We would, well, first of all, of course, the shape of our characters, the female character, I mean, if we just look on your screen, for instance, the female character anatomy is kind of okayish, but then you look at those square shoulders, rigid, the square like back and shoulders of the male character with these teensy weensy little hands that look ridiculous, like at the end of these sticky like hands or hands as sticks. You don't even want to actually dress your character to look nice. But let's just imagine that that problem had been solved. Let's imagine that our characters actually had a nice anatomy. They had nice emotes and they'd be swaying around and moving around and looking around and all that good stuff. That we would have character bodies that we would actually want to dress. Well, then it's just the obvious solution that we just need a much larger selection of clothing, of gear, and, how to get that? Would it be through tailoring? Sure. But then we come to one of my big pet peeves about Worm, which is that hunting for mobs. I mean, in other games, this is going on a whole different tangent. But if we're thinking about how to get those bits of clothing, of course, it is unrealistic. I like the fact that Worm sticks to realism for sure. I never want to see like if you go to kill a bear that its belly's going to be full of gold coins and weapons and armor. No, but there could be something, for instance, from the humanoid mobs that they have gathered little bits of armor or some tattered bit of clothing that upon perhaps repairing it you would end up with a beautiful skirt or shirt or something like that. I would just love to see that much more in Worm, that there's something actually fun about going to hunt down mobs and creatures. Or if we think about
Ooh. Sorry, I'll let you
oh
finish your thought.
Elminster's raiding with 12. Hello.
Elminster's rated with the party of 12. Thank you so much for joining. In this pause, I do want you to finish the thought. Michio had a comment that maybe it's not the buffs. This is back to the actual items. What benefits do we get? It's true that buffs are like, let's say, skill gain is not the only thing that we can woo. It's not the only thing that you can give. You could do like less failures, for example, or less or more quality per tick, or more times you get a tick, or like there's all these little things that you could add up that's not necessarily just like 20% to skill gain or something. Anyway, just wanted to say that. But yeah, Elminster, thanks so much for the raid. Hopefully you had a good stream. And for everybody that's just joined, Katz was on where we're in a discussion where we're talking about role play and how that would fit into Wurm. And in particular, we were looking at gear. So our ideas of, we remember playing, let's say, games that we played in the past, whether it was World of Warcraft, Ultima Online, whether it was EverQuest, and we're looking at those games saying, man, there were items in the game that we spent hours and hours trying to get, hundreds of hours, and we wanted we wanted them so that we could wear them and show them off, in the towns or in places. And then the question that I posed to Cats was, how would you translate that feeling of getting the item? How would we allow Wurm players to get that same feeling about wanting those items? Whoa, I'm not doing this correctly, it looks like. And then apply that to the Wurm. Are we still going? We're still going. And Wolfmere,
Yeah.
yes, I am driving around in circles, apparently.
Yeah,
And
the
so,
only
yeah,
thing.
so you can continue there.
Well, the only last thing I was like in the process of pondering how we could get cool like clothing items. We already talked about the anatomy, how that needs to be fixed, but I was just before Elminster's raid came in, I was talking about how I would wish to see so many more opportunities. I mean, think about Halloween, guys. How fun was it going to look for those masks, for the shoulder pads, for the witch's hat? It was so much fun. Now, definitely we want to have like special occasions like that, but it happens so far and few in between in Wurm. I would love to see much more than that. And if we want to stick to the realism, I was just talking about, is it
Mm-hmm.
realistic for a bear to have its belly full of armor and weapons and stuff? But it could be implemented maybe in a fun way that, you might find a partially decomposed, no, partially, um, what is it? Digested. Yeah, partially digested red sleeve in a bear's belly. They had eaten, a character at some point, and there's still remnants of that character's outfit in
Right.
one belly. Maybe you could go kill like some other bears or some wolves, and you'd find maybe the torso piece of that shirt. You could, with tailoring skill, you could sew them together, and you would end up with this very special, cool shirt. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Farron? Like, I know
So,
you would be inspired to have cool stuff, but how would we get it? How would we
right.
get that into Wurm?
So I had a slightly different view because yes, we can have it. So mobs or whatever they want to do, maybe they decide that they want to introduce a new race or something, or use goblins to one idea we had a very long time ago is that they would be creating their own little villages around, and those villages would become something that Wurm players could potentially take part in to fight them off and destroy their villages and get some rewards that way. But Mishio, penalties for killing tortoises. Yeah. But here were basically my simple ideas of how you could get that feeling of wanting to get these particular types of items, having it take time so that you're not just like, oh, I want to create that item. Well, here's some cotton. Boom, I've got it. And now I have no reason to level them up. Right?
Mm.
Why would you ever level your cloth glove to 90 quality?
Mm.
Like, is anybody, and this is the real question for anybody in the chat, why would you do it? Why would you take a cloth, let's even say a cloth set, and level it to 90 quality? And you can't answer because you can, Dutchman, because that's not a real answer. That's a real answer. For skill, there you go. So that's one. And Elminster, you would have one cloth glove that high to be the MJ of Wurm. That's true. It's like, do you need to? You don't need to raise it. No one in their right minds would be like, I'm going out hunting guys in my 90 quality cloth set. right? And we're saying worm answers. We're not like, there's no reason. But so one thing that you could do, or that they could do, is make it so as you level your items, the look of the item changes.
Hmm.
So the look of a 1 quality cloth glove should not look the same as a 90 quality cloth glove, and
Like
take
where
that
this
logic
going.
into all of the armor pieces. So
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden we haven't added any gear, and if they did, this would be great for it. But all of a sudden, a 1 quality person using, or sorry, 1 quality person, a 1 level 1 or new player that put on their leather gear would not look the same as a 90 quality leather gear that a high quality person would be wearing. It would substantially look better. The 1 quality should look like it's tattered. It should look like it's not something you would want to wear. And so that's something that they could do to allow us, in just a slight worm way, to want to spend that time to achieve that goal of having that pristine looking cloth set or new gear that comes out. So they come out with a dress, and the dress looks like it's tattered, unless you level it up and you want to spend that time, and then you to level it up to 90, and then you wear it and you show it off. Look at how nice this looks. That sort of thing. So that's number 1. Number 2, items. Oh, I wrote down here because I knew I was going to forget this. So number 2, the ability for a master craftsman of some kind to discover, create, or find recipes of, let's just give an example of either a leatherworker or a cloth tailor, to discover new clothing, or to create new types of clothing, or to find some recipe somewhere. And you kind of get where I'm going at here, that only they can create because they discovered it and found it. Maybe it's some sort of knowledge transfer things. At first it needs to be discovered, and then those master craftsmen can then sell or trade this new type of clothing to other players.
They just couldn't give the recipe over that, but they could create the end item, is what you're saying.
Right. They could learn how to do it from a master. And it can kind of breed that way, where all of a sudden we don't just automatically know everything. We skilled enough, and now we know how to create all this stuff. That there could be a different way, that there's these higher level items that you would have to then discover, or in some sort of way that, and it could be multiple different ways of discovering these things. That so if you're a person and you're like, I really wanted this set, you saw somebody else wear it, and now you're there and you're trying to track down, how do I get clothing like that? And then you're looking up and you're asking players, and they're explaining, well, you got to do this, or got to do this, or whatever the way is. And then you get to the point where now you have to do all of this stuff, to spend those hours to be able to achieve the ability to create the items, and then now you're wanting to, you finally get that piece of garb or whatever it is, and you're wearing it with pride because you just went through all that time to spend to be able to put it on. Anyway, that's number 2. Maybe I should pause here.
No, go on. Get it all out, Farron.
Okay, get it all out. Number 3. So, having the ability to, as, let's say, a master craftsman of some kind, to take a piece of item, like I'm wearing a studded leather, let's say breastplate or whatever it's called, a chest piece, and unlock abilities to modify the look of it.
Mm.
So even though, let's say, and this is for the devs that say, I don't want to deal with all these new pieces of armor. I don't want to deal with having to balance the different things and that sort of thing. Well, okay, we got leather, we've got studded leather, we've got all these things. So give us the ability to alter the look of those and be able to unlock the ability to change the look, but essentially they function in the same way as that piece of armor. So in
Just
this case,
cosmetic.
so in this case, yeah, we get the cosmetic looks that we want, the variety in Wurm, but we again would have to unlock the ability to do those. Like we don't just get them automatically. So as a player, you would go out there, you'd be like, that guy looks really cool. That guy is strutting around with that thing, and you learn how to do that. And there's a process to be able to do that, to unlock that type of ability to alter the item. And so you get the ability to do that. Maybe the gear needs to be a specific level. Maybe you have to discover something or do something or learn something. Thank you, typical. I'm very happy, unlike how I look, but I'm going up a mountain, aren't I? Okay.
Uh-oh.
This is great. And it's a bear. Oh, I'm cry laughing like you could see. There's so many times I wanted it to be a bear and it never was a bear. And now we're just randomly running into bears everywhere. Anyway, you guys get it.
Out of those three things, you know what really excited me was the first one that you talked about, like the raising
So I
the
could have
quality.
stopped at the first one? No.
Yeah, they were all cool ideas. I wasn't quite sure, like in the second one that you're talking about perhaps this master crafter being able to teach their, they've discovered the secret to making something. And I'm not sure if I would agree with them being able to teach that ability to other players, because then
I guess it depends on what the teaching looks like, right?
I think it could be misused, or it would be misused for people to just like fast forward to. I think it makes what would be. I think if it would work that way, that they would have learned this special ability to make something, and they could make items and sell them forward. Sure, but I wouldn't want to see them actually teaching it to other players. They need to go to that. They need to do the long hard path themselves, I think, too, because then it would remove the value, I think, for that person who had done the work.
I would say, as a worm deer, I would say that maybe it could be both. And the only reason I say this is because I am a big proponent in a system that would allow a master mentee sort of system, master apprentice system. The benefit of a veteran player being able to mentor a new player in the game, and both of those players getting something out of it, fostering that relationship. So, and I agree with what you're saying. So maybe would you agree with something like there are certain master apprentice sort of relationships that could unlock a certain set of different clothing or that sort of thing, but maybe not even the vast majority of them, maybe just some of them. And then there's also other ways, other things that just don't transfer, that you can't teach, and that they would have to go through. And so both are viable, and you got the like simple ones, the ones that players can teach others and it fosters that relationship, and then you got the nice like ones that just are just too hard or too skilled for somebody to teach somebody else. Now both systems work, and it's not just an all or nothing, because I feel like Wurm's not an all or nothing type of game. Oop.
I wonder where we are right now. Have you been keeping track at all?
Yeah, I feel like we're close to the shore, and there's this mountain stopping us from getting over to
Just in
it.
the way.
So it's possible that I climb, make it to the other side, or it's possible that I just go around it.
And Elminster was just saying here a little bit earlier something that sort of relates to that first one that you were talking about. So he was saying that I think it's kind of cool part of other MMOs that you see some high level players and you think, damn, do we have that experience in Wurm? I guess if somebody's wearing dragon or drake armor, but that's about it, isn't it?
That's the only one.
And
And
isn't
does it
that
look great?
sad? Yeah, well,
I love
it's
the sort of response. It's like the Drake looks, yeah. I feel like the
kinda.
scale does not look good. Personally, I don't know what it is, and scale. I mean, it's different. So obviously, since it's different, it's good. But I was hoping that it would look a lot better.
And we discussed, of course, this at a different time, that we were just having a discussion about the look of Wurm clothing and armor in general. It has a very quirky nature to it. Like, I'm going to put that in the kindest words I can put it into. So quirky is the word I'm going to use. It
I
let's
love
just
that.
say that I don't have the motivation to work towards clothes or armor. I've literally never had any desire to try and take part in the dragon hunts to get dragon scale to make
Mhm.
dragon armor, even though I know I'd get the stats, but it's just not pretty enough for me. If Worm had even one set of clothing that looked just amazing,
Yeah.
I would probably work really hard for that. That has been a sort of gaping hole, I think,
Now,
as far as character customization goes. And just before you start,
mhm.
I just wanted to once again just talk about that first idea that you had, that just how much I love that idea, that you would have one piece of clothing that could, I mean, imagine that um tattered browned stained bit of like a shirt that starts off that way, and then in the end it's this regal velvety gold trimmed like shirt that it transforms just like the character transforms itself as it gets higher in its skills. That
Right.
shirt has its own life. I really really love that idea, and that also gives the freedom for a player to choose their progression. I'm feeling like a peasant. I'm just getting started in the game. I want to just be a simple farmer. And now, 5 years later, I've gained the riches. I feel like I deserve that red shirt with the gold trim. And it's the same old shirt that I've been wearing all these years, but now I'm, high enough skill to actually show my experience in the game. I really like that. So yeah, sorry about that. What were you going to say?
No, that's so good. That is a good question. Oh, okay, so I was gonna say two things. The first one is, okay, beanbag. I saw the picture, and I don't. I'm assuming everybody else can see the link, and you can look at it. And he's showing uh, what dragon scale looks like. And I would say it looks better. Like, I would say take off those shoulder pads, take off that hat, because those two aren't dragon scale. And let's take a look. It looks okay, but even if it looked amazing, am I sure I don't want Regis? Am I sure I don't want dragon scale? Now, it's not that I don't want dragon scale. It's that,
I want it to
and I
look
think I was
good.
about to say this. I was about to say, yeah, in order to look good, or in order to, I think the reason for dragon scale is that there's no journey in getting there. It doesn't give you that excitement. It's the wrong thing to say, but the journey is, you have to find the dragon, and you have to kill it, and then get small little bits and pieces of it as you create your own armor set. And to me, and this might just be personal, I don't feel like that's the journey that I want to take. Like at the end of that journey, I'm not looking back and saying, oh, look at all this cool stuff that I had to do to get this armor set. It doesn't give that same feeling. I don't know if that makes sense than what we were talking about earlier. You would not allow dragons to be jailed. They could fly out. Are they? Do they not fly out still? Of like these jails? There was a change that happened that they made it so that dragons did fly away or did go away. And there was some backlash to that. I don't know if they removed it or changed it or something. Is the troll still following us at all?
No, but we have a mountain lion after us now.
Oh, okay.
So I think we could take that one down. Yeah, I'm not seeing the troll at all anymore.
Okay, let me go up here. So people are still trapping these dragons and that sort of thing, and yeah, I do wish that they kept the ability to make them free. But at the same time, and I actually felt the same way in EverQuest, there's just some things, some tasks that requires just too many. Ooh. There we go. That was just too much, and then the reward wasn't worth the amount that you had to do. Like, in order for me to get this dragon scale, I'd have to go too much above and beyond the amount of time spent versus the reward, and then I'm left with an item that I don't necessarily enjoy, if that makes sense. Okay, so west. No, we're going east, so it was this way. Okay, cool. Yeah, you got to be the one for raiding, but then even raiding has some sort of set schedule that you could go by, even in EverQuest. You don't have that in... Oh, we're really on top of a mountain. You don't have that in Wurm at all, really. Even when they put rifts in, you had to go by Wurm's schedule, not by your schedule. And you had to spend a long time to like just get to the right location that you'd want to do. And before rifts came into the game, I had suggested a system that I thought would work similar to the way they ended up doing rifts, but would give the power of scheduling onto the players. The players would have to perform certain things in order to spawn the mobs or to start the event. I don't really want to get into it now, but yeah, I wish that they allowed that system. You know, then an alliance would be like, okay, let's work towards a goal, get to that goal, so that we can then trigger this event to start this awesome ability to work as a team, to kill these mobs, and to get the prizes.
Yeah, I remember you guys have talked about this kind of idea several times. Oh, darn.
I think we're good.
Oh, okay,
all right. Good. So we're still going east.
Should we get you just repaired a little bit
healed
first?
A little bit? Yeah. Maybe I should look at if I have any mediums. One medium, it is healing.
I'm trying to heal that now.
Okay. Oh, you got that one. A light and a light. Did I drop my cotton? Oh no, here it is. Let's try to get this aura of blood. disappear a little bit. All right. I guess one more.
There we go. That's better. Yeah, I think Validate was worried about you there. He needs to be healed before combat. Big risk.
At least we came through it. We came through it. And Starth, you said you were never one for raiding. You've always been a crafter. Yeah, then I guess this is the game for you. And every game that you crafted items should be better in look and stats than other items. That's what we're hoping for. And Onda, seems like the priest could possibly call on the gods and ask for a rift. See that? Sure. Like my whole system was like the alliance or the village would have to work together. Oh man. Would have to work together in order to build something or to have a memorial built. It takes a long time to get this ready, and then once it's ready, then they can trigger the event to start. Whether it's like then, and what you're saying, like a priest would come and have to call onto the gods at this sort of place that they built, and get them to summon the rift for that alliance to kill it. It's just the point would just be that it gives the control back to the user or the players. And Pyro, give me the power to rip open the sky. I can see you using that quite a lot if you had that power. To control the weather, that would be a cool power. Once we get really nice weather, which is another RP thing that I think should happen.
The atmosphere. Like, I don't. Did you and Adam ever play Dark Age of Camelot?
We did not play Dark Age of Camelot. That's the one game that we've always heard about.
The reason I ask, and of course, I mean, if I'm just thinking about MMOs that had really atmospheric, memorable rain situations where the rain was coming down and there was the sound effect of it, and you felt if I remember correctly, if you went inside, the rain sound subsided and it felt like you're hearing it from outside. I'm not quite entirely sure. I mean, I know this is something Retro's talked about a lot, is that he really would like to see more atmospheric sounds, these ambient sounds. And then if you were outside in the rain, it was very loud and splashy, you know, as it came down. And we just don't have that experience at all in Wurm. Once in a while, of course, you do hear the thunder in the background, but it's so... We need like a proper rainfall with all the splattering sounds on the ground to really give that cozy feeling if you go inside from the cold weather or the rainy weather.
For sure, yeah. That's what I really hope that's something that would be on a future roadmap list. Something that one of the devs or somebody could be focusing on, just fleshing out the atmosphere, being able to have rain, have snowstorms, have different variations of rain, have clouds, cloud cover depending on the intensity of the rain. That would just be the most immersive thing that they could do for the environment to provide us with.
Physic, you were also saying Dark Age of Camelot, the only MMO where you've really felt cold during snowfall.
Wow.
And I mean, that just goes to show how it was sort of ahead of its time, because of course these days, I mean, that was years ago. That was, what was it, 2001, something like that. And here we are, you know, nearly, is it really? No. Am I imagining things? Yes. It's like nearly 20 years later. And of course, now with the really beautiful, well done MMOs, I'm assuming that other MMOs have implemented it as well or even better than Dark Age of Camelot did back then. But yeah, I mean that is it, and it's a relatively cheap way as well to give a lot of atmosphere and feeling to a game like Wurm, because it could in it quite simply just even be in the sound file that is chosen. And
Yeah.
if we also think about the wind in Wurm, it is rather like the sound of the wind in Wurm is really desolate. It's really quite lonely and depressing. Whereas if I go into a game like Legends of Aria, the sound of the wind is so relaxing and soothing. And not that we shouldn't have also the depressing wind, but all I'm saying is that it really has a huge impact on the atmosphere you feel as you play the game. And
Yeah.
yeah, we
Sound
need
is something that
improvements for
this
that.
game can improve on.
Badly needs, yeah.
100%. And it doesn't even have to be like, what's great about sound is that there's so many good sound places, that atmosphere sounds that a team like Wurm could purchase and implement into their game. And it wouldn't even have to take a lot of dev time, wouldn't have to take a lot of their time to do this sort of thing, because these sounds already exist, and that's how games do it, right? They have sound banks, they have sound places that they can purchase, and I can tell you that it wouldn't be foreign to Wurm either to do that. They've done it in the past.
So one topic that we were sort of chatting about last night about the stuff that we would talk about on the stream. And one thing that we didn't talk about really, we sort of dabbled quickly into it, but it was, is there a downside of a game having roleplay elements added to it, or elements that are promoting roleplay, or having role players around? Can anyone have a complaint about that? Is it taking away from anyone's experience? Is it annoying anyone? Because what I often find in various MMOs is you're going to have some people who are very rigidly against any role play stuff, and they almost seem like super bothered by it. I wonder if it's those pine trees ahead, by the way.
Oh, I hope so. This is a great question for everybody in the chat right now. It's interesting that there's no mobs. What would you be annoyed? And if you would be annoyed, what exactly would you be annoyed about with regards to roleplay features? This is really tough to know where we are. We need to be around here.
So Onda is saying, it seems reasonable that if you have a way for people to roleplay, you should also have a way for them to opt out as well. Absolutely, especially if it's not like a role-playing server. And Validate is saying...
Yeah, in reverse of that, it, I think, makes more sense that it's more that you're automatically not opt-in, and you would have to opt in to roleplay. And mostly everybody would be a default not be, not have to all opt out or anything.
I don't think role players would mind either way, as long as the options were there for them to use if they wanted to. Validate is saying, as a sandbox game, adding anything is good as long as it's not forced. Need to keep the game sandbox, allow it as options. Absolutely. Drogo's roleplay itself is great. Overly dedicated role-playing players that only accept other extremely experienced role-playing players is discouraging. Yes, you will. That that is a kind of annoyance. Like I've found, especially on the role playing servers of World of Warcraft, you'll have some of these snobby role players who make these high demands on other players, and they won't be flexible and understanding if somebody's just starting out, just learning how to role play, maybe making some mistakes. They need to be gently coaxed into, you know, into perhaps better like character names, or not speaking about real life issues if they wish to role play, of course. Now on a server
Mm-hmm.
here where it is not an actual role playing server, role players definitely need to be even more flexible than that, and they should not be, mocking or being disgruntled if people are talking about real life issues, since that is not a demand of this type of server. So it's only going to what's the phrase, shoot them in the foot if you start to be snobby about it, and then you're going to really build that kind of negative perception of role players and role playing if people get super snobby about it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I want
I
it to
do
be more
agree.
of a relaxed type of experience. That's how
Mhm.
I see role playing. Shouldn't be forced, and it shouldn't be serious. And I mean, that would go without saying for any extreme, wouldn't it? Wouldn't
Mm.
it? Not just role playing. Like, and we're talking. Oh, we just don't like the people that are extremely into it and like don't take anything else. Um, I mean, you can basically say that about anything. Those players that are overly serious about hunting,
Mm.
like just too, like I don't mind hunting and I don't mind this, but those players that are just like in your face and yeah, are and that just goes for life.
So typical,
So
you were saying
yeah, so this is
being
this is good.
sure, being optional sounds good until you find yourself with either an area of full role players that you can't interact with, or they find themselves alone. Finding a place to stay in a worm is hard enough if you have to worry about your neighbors being similar to you about role playing too. It's more things to worry about. That's absolutely a valid point for sure. So typical, would you say that that is like would that be one of the reasons that somebody would reject any kind of role playing, that they might have been scarred or had like bad experiences from role players in other games? That they felt like they were not included or didn't feel like they, because I have definitely seen some role players who were so snobby, so elitist that they would not even, they would just look at you down, what's the phrase, down the side of their nose? No, what's, maybe I'm thinking about a Finnish phrase here, but like, yeah, look down upon like people who are not, well, first of all, they wouldn't even like interact with non-role players. Then if you were kind of like a beginner role player, they'd be super snobby to you and try to tell you how to do the role playing. So that would not be cool at all, obviously. And I'm just wondering if there's a lot of players out there who were burned from these types of snobby role players.
I mean, everybody's comments is true in the sense. Oh god, I think we're coming up to the right place. This is good.
Oh,
Ooh, let's go. Oh my god, here it is. Somehow, once you reach this area, look at how many mobs are stuck here.
I wonder why they're drawn to
Oh,
this spot.
this is not good.
We'll be fine, Farron. We'll be fine. Let me look at your situation here. You
Wow.
just have one light bandage bruise. Nothing to complain about.
Look, there's
Uh,
another brown horse.
Moxie says, I see potential for drama if people choose to grief or harass and are like, oh, I'm role playing my character. That has happened before in Wurm, and you think it would need to be made clear that role playing doesn't mean you can cause other players grief. Yeah. Oh, like they're using the role playing thing as an excuse to then do mean things to you. Yeah, yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, and
Now, if
that's
it's
an extreme that I was
yeah,
referring to.
yeah,
So, I mean, I do want to sum up here and to typical point and everybody else's point. Role playing is a niche. Wurm is a niche. You're essentially talking about a niche of a niche. And I think that's fine in the sense that role playing itself, or the act of role playing, gives you these niche players the ability to do what they love. But the thing is, and wow, that is a random bed out in the middle of nowhere.
oh my
Oh my,
gosh.
how did they
I
get a
wonder.
bed?
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of new players don't realize that the bed is actually not going to help you unless it is built within a house with all of the bottom walls. I didn't know that actually at all in the beginning when I started either.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even think, can you make a bed outdoors?
Sure, sure you can.
It
It's
does
just
allow you
not
to
going to
put it
help
together.
you, and you
Oh,
can sleep on it as well as far as I know. It just doesn't give the sleep bonus.
yeah. So now that we've established that, so we know it's a niche of a niche, it's just fine. But the thing is that even if you don't want to take part in role playing, and this is why I mentioned, yeah, for any role playing mechanic feature like tagging yourself RP or doing anything RP related, that it should be opt out, like by default, and then if you're wanting to RP, you opt into it, that sort of thing, right? It should be that way and not the
Mm.
opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in saying that, yes, the mechanics and the idea of actually role playing, not everybody would want to do, but the features that allows the devs to focus on, the immersion and the atmosphere and the character, which ties into all the character animations and all the things that a role player would want, a weather system, stuff that brings them into the game. I feel like that is what all Wurm players would benefit
Mm.
from. These aren't roleplay
Mm.
specific features that we've asked for. I don't think one feature that was mentioned in this whole stream is a roleplay specific feature only for role players.